Hello, Utah. This is Brian Stinson with the Utah Division of Emergency Management and Be Ready Utah. We are going to be talking about how you can prepare yourselves and your family for emergencies today. With me, we've got a couple of guests. We have Ryan Deering. He's the Field Services Manager for the Division of Drinking Water with the Department of Environmental Quality. Thank you for being here. And we have Carl Hartman, the Environmental Health Program Manager with the Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. So, today we're going to be talking about earthquakes. We had that one a few years ago back in 2020. We are overdue to get a big earthquake. So I guess the question is, what would happen to our water and those kinds of our utilities in the event of a large-scale earthquake?
So the scenario that we're expecting, if we have the big one, large earthquake along the Wasatch Front, estimates are it could be as large as 7.0 magnitude. So what that looks like as far as drinking water is we're anticipating region-wide power outages. So anything that requires power will not be running unless they have backup generators. So any pumps, any equipment or facilities. They estimate that on day one, there will be approximately 450,000 households that will be without clean drinking water. And that's households, not population. So you multiply that by about 3, so you're looking at nearly 1.5 million people without drinking water on day one. The scary thing is they estimate 3 months in, we're still looking at about 350,000 households that are without drinking water. So it's going to be large scale. It's going to be an extended period of time that we're going to have people without water.
So that's drinking water, but that also means that we can't flush and we can't shower and do all those other kinds of hygienic things that we need to. What are we looking at in terms of hygiene and sanitation in terms of the large-scale earthquake?
Yeah, in terms of hygiene and sanitation, now we're looking at not only just the lack of drinking water, but now you don't have working toilets for the disposal of human waste. You don't have working sinks for washing hands. You don't have working showers or bathtubs for bathing. And there's no water for dishwashing or washing clothes. And now you have to start thinking about food safety concerns and considerations, like if meals are prepared with unwashed hands on dirty surfaces with dirty dishes, you can easily be spreading foodborne illness or waterborne illness. So now we start looking at hygiene issues and food safety and waterborne and foodborne illnesses.
What are some things we can do maybe in a situation like this where we may not have that running water to maintain our hygiene?
Yeah, in a situation like this, it's a good idea to prepare beforehand with a temporary hand wash station. This is something that you can set up now and have in your emergency preparedness kit. It doesn't take up much space, but really that's just a 5 to 10 gallon water container with a spigot, paper towels, liquid hand soap, a catch basin bucket for the water, and a small trash can with a liner. If you have one of those out and available, now you can continue to wash hands for a short duration. Once you've run out of clean water to use that, then you're looking at using hand sanitizers, which can be effective if they have a 60% alcohol or more. It's a good idea to have that on hand.
What might be a concern about water coming, if there is any water coming in, what might be some concerns about some of that water coming in?
So it might well be that a lot of people will be completely out. If they're not completely out, we plan to issue a blanket boil order for the entire area, so that even if your water is running, you still need to treat it or boil it appropriately in order to drink it, because you can't trust the quality of the water that even if you were getting it through your taps. One thing that we anticipate, we mentioned a 5-gallon jug with a spigot. We always recommend that people have various storage options. So you might have a bulk storage like a 50-gallon drum or a 100-gallon tank in your basement. But then it would move into a phase where you have bulk water storage, like portable water tankers that people would then fill up with like a 5-gallon jug to take that back to their home. And that's a lot more efficient than having dozens of small water bottles. So you want to think about bulk storage, small portable storage, and something in between that you could take 5 or 10 gallons at a time to move from a distribution point back to your home.
What are some other things that Utahns can do to prepare for the possibility of not having water?
I would say some treatment option, either filtration or chemical treatment like chlorine. Have some form of chlorine, whether that's liquid bleach or powdered chlorine that you can use to treat water to make it potable. So you're killing off any disease-causing organisms in the water that you do get. Because, personally, even if I was getting the water from, a portable water tanker, I would still probably add some chlorine to that myself just to be sure that it's not going to make you sick.
Right.
So it's always a good thing to be prepared with. But if you do use liquid bleach, you want to make sure it doesn't have any scents or additives that aren't safe for human consumption.
And you're also talking about having a boil water notice.
Yes.
I know that here in Utah, we're at a higher elevation. Usually people talk about your boil water needs to be about 1 minute rolling boil.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we learned if you were in Utah when we did some research, I think we talked to some people in your department as well, is it really needs to be about a full 3-minute boil at our average elevation, and maybe even longer than that if you go higher.
Yeah, we do recommend boiling it for longer because at the higher elevation, the water boils at a lower temperature, so it doesn't kill the organisms as quickly.
Now, Carl, what can happen with diseases and things?
Yeah, you see the spread of disease when sanitation breaks down. And we use water for so many things. We use water to wash our hands and to bathe and to clean. And so when you don't have access to clean potable water for those things, now hands are a vehicle for transmitting harmful germs from surfaces to food, to other people. So you can see the spread of harmful germs in that way. You can contaminate food where people who consume the food can get sick. And then when surfaces are dirty, if there's vomiting or diarrheal events that are going on and you can't properly clean and disinfect those, now you can see how that can spread to others as well. So with the breakdown of infrastructure, you don't have clean water, you can see a pretty quick breakdown in hygiene and then sanitation and then spread of disease.
What do we do with human waste if we can't flush the toilets? I guess, can we flush the toilet? Do we want to flush toilets?
It really depends on the severity of the situation, but if there's no water, and I think we could just plan this scenario that there's no water and no sewer infrastructure, that it would be a good idea to plan for creating a makeshift toilet. Honestly, before an emergency, if there's a plan to get those supplies in order, that's the best way to do it. Expelling our bodies of human waste is an important part of everyday health. In an emergency situation without normal facilities, we need to provide a safe and sanitary means for ourselves and our families to take care of this necessity in a relatively easy and comfortable way. And so there's some things that need to be taken into consideration when planning for an emergency toilet. And that would be first, privacy. People won't go if they don't feel comfortable with the situation, right? And you don't want that to happen. Second is distance. You need to make sure that your makeshift toilet is close enough for the family members to use it, but yet far enough away from privacy, safety, and environmental cleanliness.
So we don't want our 3-year-old to have to truck all the way across town to use the
Right.
potty.
It still needs to be in proximity where it's usable by all the family members. And that ties into the third, which is ease of use. If you have, for example, those that are potty trained, you need to think about how can we accommodate this. Or if you have older people who maybe are not able to, there's makeshift toilet, we're talking about buckets to be frank. And maybe you have elderly individuals in your household who are not able to use that. So you have to think about how to accommodate those things. And then next is sanitation control. In the breakdown of these things, some people think, oh, just go behind the tree. Like they're just thinking about privacy and just doing it. But the problem with that is now you have a the potential for that human waste to be spread all over the place. And it's spread by rodents, by flies, runoff, and so it can cause all kinds of issues. So you never want to be doing that. It attracts insects and rodents. And then next is just the waste disposal and the short-term storage. So if you have the ability to bury the waste, if you have the ability to containerize, there's a whole description of a 2-bucket system on Be Ready Utah website, and describes separating the liquid waste from the solid waste and the system for managing that solid waste. And if you have the ability to bury that waste, that would be best. If not, then containerizing and waiting for further instruction from the sanitation would be the next best step.
All right, yeah, I think about there's so many people now in Utah that live in apartments and may not have any yard at all, that burying it is not an option.
Yeah, in situations like that, waste management is going to be so important to prevent vermin from showing up and spreading infectious disease everywhere, and just having human waste being stored in one certain location until that can be disposed of properly. Keeping dumpsters covered, keeping the areas around it clean to avoid attracting vermin is also very important to prevent the spread of disease.
It sounds like the whole hygiene sanitation thing is not just something I need to worry about for myself and my family. It sounds like it's really a neighborhood community issue. When that happens, anything I do will very easily be affecting my neighbor.
Absolutely. You can't control what your neighbor is doing, but you can control what you're doing in your environment. And so if you're not allowing waste to spread out from your environment, and if each person is doing their part, especially if they're protecting waterways, we don't want to be disposing of human waste in creeks or rivers and just thinking, oh, that goes away. It doesn't go away. That's going to be someone's drinking water downstreams.
How much water is realistic for an individual to store?
Well, the general recommendation is at least a gallon per day per person. So depending on the size of your family, do the math from there. Like I said, we're talking about at least 5 days, 5 days worth of water for your immediate family. And I would, of course, as an emergency preparedness person, I would recommend going above and beyond that. When we had the Magna earthquake, I remember I was getting ready for work. The earthquake hit. I ran upstairs, did a quick damage assessment. I realized the house was still standing. I thought, it's not the big one. That was a good one. It's not the big one. We're okay. Practice one. The first thing I did was I told my wife, we need to start filling every container in the house with water because we don't have enough water stored. And so my advice would just be make sure you've got enough water storage and go above and beyond what you think you might need, because it might be more than just your individual family that you might need to help with that.
What if somebody doesn't have that ideal storage of a basement?
Well, anything's better than nothing, I would say, even if it's under your bed in your apartment. Having some type of water storage is critical. But yeah, something's better than nothing. Just do what you can with what you have would be my recommendation.
Any recommendations on water treatment?
I don't have any particular brand to recommend, but I would recommend having some type of, I always recommend having multiple options. So different types of treatment, maybe a chemical treatment and a filtration treatment. You got to think about, like a small individual filter is good for 200 liters of water, like something you would take backpacking. In this type of event, we're going to be using that for a long period of time. So you're either going to need multiple cartridges or look into a system that can handle a larger volume, because we're talking long term. We're talking large amounts of water you're going to have to treat with that.
Water is going to be at a premium. So you've got to conserve the water that you have, but not at the expense of our health, whether that's from needing to drink water or from hygiene and sanitation. All right, so just wrapping this up, if there is somebody listening to this says, okay, that's great, but what can I do right now if there was an earthquake this week? What's one thing that I can do right now for me and my family to be more prepared? One thing they can do this week.
The one thing I would recommend is more water storage. People don't think about that enough. People take for granted that they just turn on the tap and the water is going to be there. And like I said, during the Magna earthquake, that was my first impulse, was to start storing water while it was still running.
Yeah, if I could tell families one thing this week to prepare for an event like this, I think the water storage is so important, but also starting the process of assembling these emergency sanitation kits, such as a temporary hand wash station and a 2-bucket toilet system. It doesn't take up much space. You know, you've got kitty litter and plastic bags and gloves and buckets, and you can keep the kitty litter in the buckets, and you know, stack the 2 buckets and you're good to go.
Well, I'd like to thank Ryan Deering and Carl Hartman for joining us today and discussing this important topic of how to prepare for water and hygiene sanitation in a potential earthquake situation that we really much could have here in Utah. For more information, you can visit our website as well, bereadyutah.gov. You can find out about water storage and treatment. You can find out about hygiene and sanitation, how you can be more prepared in those regards, and also information about earthquakes.